Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode and we have our very supportive friend, Mr. Homestoners, Pacific Rime Business Councils. We have our faculty from California, Miramar University, Mr. Eric, as well as Dr. Stan Fosters. And we want to share a good news with our audience like World Talent Economy Forums. We already collaborate with India with 1 million of students, and they will distribute World Talent Economy Forums contents. So by this way, all of our episode, we will distribute around 5 million people by this year's already, not only from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, Vietnam, even China, Singapore, Malaysia, many university, school, college, governments, even many corporations, they are joining and they are trying to support World Talent Economy Forums. So I want to give special thanks, Mr. Homestoner, for all of your support to World Talent Economy Forums, and we want to see you in our board as an advisor, as well as Mr. Stan Foster and Mr. Eric for all of your intellectual support to our community. And today we will discuss about Industry 4.0. And I think our students learn a lot for Industry 4, as well as we are distributing all of our content with the California Miramar University. So any of your DBA program student, MBA program student, through Sustainable Excellence Centers, they can use World Talent Economy Forum contents. Any of our content, you can utilize our content in any ways. So I want to start with our great friend and advisor, Mr. Homestoner. So how are you today? How do you want to share your experience with us? You have a huge experience, and our student needs your experience.
Well, good morning to you. We're having a cold spell here in Los Angeles, so I had to bundle up a little bit today. Even my dog wanted to come home. Anyhow, we're all here together because we operate as a family. Our paradigm is that the fact that we look forward to the 21st century as a fork in the road where we can change the way human beings do business and the way they interact. To do that, we have to start looking at all of these different technologies and integrate them into our everyday life. We have California Miramar University, which is a very unique educational institute in the fact they concentrate on these new industries and try to train people how to utilize them and become experts in them. So we're all thrilled about what you're doing here, Sharif, and we're trying to support you as best we can.
Thank you. Dr. Stan.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here again with you this morning. California Miramar University is, with the efforts, our efforts led by Dr. Ali Guyabadi, who couldn't be with us this morning, is really, I think, ahead of the curve. What's happening? It used to be, in the technology changed very rapidly, and in an educational sense, you needed to keep up. What they would call keeping up, but might be changing your textbooks every 2 years at the maximum. But most schools would do it every 2, and some even every 3 years. Now in this area with Industry 4.0, things are changing by the month, and so we've been charged with augmenting our textbooks with materials that are brand new coming out. Of course, that takes a lot more work on the part of our faculty, but it also keeps our students right at the cutting edge of what's happening with all of this new technology and the technology developments and how that affects various businesses. Now we see, Amazon here in the United States is one of the leading companies that is utilizing a lot of Industry 4.0 technology. I think Alibaba is doing the same thing internationally. But the ability to, before, prior to utilizing this smart technology where the machine is doing much of the processing and routing of the shipments and things like that, it physically, the packages couldn't have been delivered as quickly as they are being delivered. And again, one of the things that's really important about this technology is that people are trustworthy. In the United States, people would rather buy, in many cases, from Amazon than directly from the vendor, even though they could get the same product from the vendor. And why is because they've automated the process of returns. You can return it, much easier. Sometimes you buy a product online and you think it's great, and then all of a sudden you have a nightmare trying to get the material returned because they haven't developed their processes yet. They're definitely not using Industry 4.0 technologies. So again, as we spoke of last time, that it's going to be the jobs that humans do when they're interacting with Industry 4.0 are going to change. They're going to be more of interfacing, because again, now you have many industries that can work 24/7, and because of the utilization of the Industry 4.0 technology. And so again, you don't truly need a human even there in many times to interface, but yet there, people still are in a situation where many times they would really like to have that human interaction. And I think that's where we see much of the interface coming in the future, is that the managerial roles, but also those roles where we're interfacing human to human and personalizing that and still making that much more palatable for the end consumer.
Thank you. Mr. Eric.
Yes, let me tell you why I'm a World Talent Economy Forum YouTube channel subscriber. And for those that aren't yet, it's a pretty easy fix. If you get YouTube, is just hit on the subscribe button. Obviously, we're very involved in the PRBC in technology, but what we realize, and my job as the CEO is actually take Homestoner's vision, our chairman, and every day work with our team to make it real. And that means taking the latest of technology and turning a 30-plus-year-old global networking, fantastic networking organization, and turning it into a modern technology platform. So this idea we're talking about is using technology. We're not just sitting here telling other people, gee, you should use technology. We've got a whole team behind us making that technology, that Industry 4.0 technology with the latest structures and business models, work for PRBC. In fact, right now, I think we have 6 doctoral students actually researching our new technology that we're going to use ourselves. And it's a lot of the same technology that California Miramar University. But here's the thing. It all comes down to people. In order to build this platform, it means everybody gets involved, everybody benefits. And so your efforts to go reach all these people, even people that can't even think of Industry 4.0 technology yet, the goal is to bring the benefits of that to everybody. And people are going to be what really makes this drive. And working with California Miramar University's Transformation Center of Excellence and their women empowerment. What that means is not looking any resource. We don't know where that person that's going to make the biggest difference is a 12-year-old girl in Bangladesh, an 85-year-old man in Mumbai. We just don't know where it is anymore. So your ability to reach out and let people know that these opportunities exist and help all of the companies and the PRBC itself go find these people is more important than I think you know.
Thank you. Mr. Homestoner, you have experience from around the world. You were in Asia Pacifics. You have a lot of engagement with China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, many countries. And I'm really pleased when I saw many of your content from your Facebook, from your social media, even in your group. You are always continue to share your knowledge with your teammates. My question is that, what's the difference we have in between Asia Pacific as well as in North America? How we can minimize this gap, and how like this Pacific Rime Business Council can help the Asia Pacific community to grow their business, to grow their knowledge, and grow their better life?
We started this organization for one reason. We wanted to promote trade, tourism, technology, and cultural exchange throughout the region. We still do that, but now it's becoming more finite. One thing that we've discovered over the years is cultural exchange is the pinnacle. It is the bedrock. Without being able to exchange your cultures seamlessly, understand each other uh, through the communication process and through the protocol process, nothing else can happen. If you don't have that mutual trust and understanding and be able to communicate properly, nothing moves, nothing happens. So that is where we start. Secondly is the travel component is extremely important, because why would you open a business or expand your business or even open any kind of mercantile type of organization if you've never seen the place, if you've never been there, if you don't even know where the place is? Travel is a very, very important component because it opens people's eyes to other cultures and to other environments. The technology aspect and the trade aspect follow. It all has a flow, a synergetic flow. So what we try to do is to concentrate on understanding, communication, and exchange of cultures as our main platform to begin with. So I can come to you, Sharif, and I know who you are. I know your country. I know your culture. I know what's proper, what's improper in the protocols of what needs to be done to earn the respect and trust so we can do big business. We can connect, we can grow. That's the ultimate objective. To get to that, we have to be able to understand each other, communicate properly, and trust and love each other as two cultures blending together.
Thank you, Dr. Stan Fosters. You are trying to produce this very good human resources, which is really, really important, and you are solving 21st century problem. And both, I think, your university working on Industry 4.0. So, what's the process? How student community can get benefit from your university? How they can get engaged with your process, or how you can help this Asia Pacific people?
Well, one of the reasons that the university has, have many of our leaders involved with the Pacific Rim Business Council is for that precise reason. We know, education and the way that we've structured the university is rather unique. Again, thanks to Dr. Guyabati, we're a private institution. And many of the public institutions have centers that are associated with them that are funded by government and by other large corporate grants and gifts. And we've created our own centers of excellence to try to do the same thing, because what we've really found, again, it comes back to that, how fast the world, how fast that information is changing. And, and it is changing so fast that we've found that, putting our particularly our doctorate of business administration, our DBA students, into an environment where we actually have them interfacing with their companies as part of their dissertation process. So as they write their dissertation and they start to work on their dissertation, we find a company that is a good fit with them that needs what they're doing. Right. So a lot of people, it's not just an exercise. Okay, I'm going to do my doctorate. I'm going to write it. Maybe somebody out there will like it. We don't take that approach, because what happens more often than not is that now you've got this life's work, if you will, that may not be applicable to anybody. And so we try to just do it a little bit differently. And I think that's the best example of what we're trying to do with Industry 4.0. Things are changing. And what Mr. Stoner said is really, really important. It's very hard. And Industry 4.0 right now is doing a lot of things to make the business process self-sustainable, faster, more efficient. It's still missing the cultural aspect. right? And I really believe what he said there is at the root and the foundational cause of what this is about. If when technology changes, it doesn't mean that everybody adopts it at the same rate. And so, businesses now, the smart businesses, and I think you're seeing this from the students and also the businesses that are part of the PAC-RIM Business Council, they're coming to these seminars to try to see, what is my industry doing? What can I do? How can I retrofit maybe my business to be more Industry 4.0? But again, we don't know these things quite yet. Now, I want to use an example, and Mr. Stoner will really be on top of this one. When the internet came in, it was more Industry 3.0, and there was ways of marketing and advertising, and they were very terrestrial. They were very set. And then all of a sudden, internet marketing came in, and everybody, what did they try to do at first blush? They tried to impose the terrestrial way of marketing onto the internet. It didn't work. All right. Now, they didn't get that. They didn't just, osmose that and come in and say, well, boom, that the whole thing has evolved over quite a few years. And now there's a whole way of marketing and doing business on the internet that is totally different than it was from the terrestrial marketing. And you're going to see similar type paradigm shifts as we go into Industry 4.0, because it takes what we've been doing and automates it to a way, and actually you can start using predictors of how your people that are buying are going to react. That's really taking it to that next level. So again, if we start utilizing these types of materials, and again, our model is different only in that we try to immerse our students and give them the practical experience, so that when they go out and start working, if they're a doctoral student that's doing a dissertation, they're already involved with that corporation. They're probably already hired by that corporation, and they're going to have a lead, and they're going to be the leader of that organization as they take that organization into Industry 4.0. So that's, I would say, is our differentiator as a university. We're proud of it, and again, we're learning just as everybody else is learning. But why do we need to constantly update our courses? Because we're constantly learning, and it's coming so fast now that you can't wait for 2 years. If somebody through a degree program, by the time they have the latest changes, and then when they hit the street, they're not having the latest technologies and the way to do things at the latest, and they're not implementing that. So again, that's our differentiator, and that's our philosophy.
Thank you. Mr. Eric, what do you want to share about your excellence centers? I'm sure it will be very much informative and very helpful for the youth community.
Sure. What makes education and industry different, that's what we're all about. Integrating education and industry and academia. So basically, the courses at California Miramar University pull from the research center. So research centers of excellence are research centers that are solving today's problems right now. So not even sometimes last week's problems, but there's always today's problems right now. And that information finds its way into the classes. So a lot of things that are taught, even in the lower classes, you won't find in a book, because it hasn't had time to even get to a book. The research centers of excellence actually pull their problems from business, and that's where the PRBC comes in. We're making sure that the centers of excellence are working on the real problems worldwide by interfacing using Holmes-Stoner's networking organization that he's built. That's where we're finding out what the real today problems, COVID problems, business problems, and it's really this idea of the problems that are most important today are, number one, is people. We all know that biggest problems you have in any organization is people, and that's this idea of, we were taught in government, check your facts, check your assumptions, check your plans, and check your execution. A lot of this culture stuff is because we may make the wrong assumptions because we don't know each other enough, and it's got to be real facts. So a lot of what the centers do is feed that fact and help understand that we have the right assumptions. So that's based on people, the right fact assumptions, because people are where the powerful. That's where the Transformation Center of Excellence comes from. Then the idea is today people have to use technology for the four major things: for culture, strategy, structure, and operations. You have to use technology. So the Industry 4.0 excellence is all about understanding the right use of technology. And then the center, the Sustainability Center of Excellence job is to make sure people and technology get put together the right way to have solutions that help organizations capture and maintain competitive advantage for years to come. And there's one other piece, and that's that we talked about earlier, is you got to find the best people. And you don't want anybody to be overlooked. And so the Center for Women Empowerment is really about diversity. It's about making sure you don't overlook what could be your best resource. And it just turns out that one group that's been overlooked more than any, that's 50% of us, is women. So it's really diversity. Let's get people working right with the right facts, assumptions, processes, and executions. Let's get the technology integrated in there. Let's get diversity. And that's the Center for Human Excellence, works on diversity. Transformation Center of Excellence works on people, relationships, and success in general. Industry 4.0 works on technology, and the Sustainability Center of Excellence works on putting that all together in packages that really work. And it's all driven by centers of excellence get their problems from business, and the classes get their education from the centers of excellence. That's kind of complex. Just did I explain that okay?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Homestoner, you are arranging some big event in Asia Pacific. I'm sure my audience love to know more about your events, and which is very much effective and which is very much helpful for Asia Pacific.
Well, as I was saying before, what is very important to jumpstart and bring economies to life is travel and tourism. It is the lifeblood of a lot of places like Thailand, Vietnam, even Singapore and Malaysia. It brings in almost a third of the income coming into these countries. To do that, you have to have some kind of hallmark event, one annual event that will identify you. Something that's different than APEC or the TTP or any of those kinds of things. Those are business to business, but something that can identify that country. Like in Vietnam, each year we have the flower festival where we display the flowers and the natural fauna of the country in a parade, in a festival, and music, and integrating all these things in there. We have the Women of Distinction that we do in Singapore, that we celebrate the top 20 women of the world every year and their accomplishment. These kinds of things not only enhance our image in front of the world, but also tie in that tourism and those people that are in the hospitality industry and help them make their businesses grow. So events are critical to what we do. And these events, like the Asian Film Festival, the Miss Asia International Pageant, we make these events so that we can bring a lot of attention to grow our image and to tie these events into local businesses to make them visible so they can connect and they can grow.
Excellent. I just want to know one point. Always we said that academic cannot produce enough human resources based on industry demand. And industry has a lot of new innovations. They are solving many problems. How we can solve this problem in an effective way? Dr. Stan Foster and Mr. Eric.
Well, one of the ways, one of the things that we looked at with our strategist about 2 years ago, we started doing it, is that seeing that exact dilemma. not everyone needs a university degree. Degree takes many years, depending on, undergraduate, it's 4 years typically. Master's programs usually are 2, and doctor programs can be 4. Sometimes a company can't wait that long for, that chain to put those people through the mill. But they can if you start functioning more as a corporate university, finding out what the corporations need. Again, one of the things I think that companies are finding more and more, we work with some exciting Chinese companies that really, one company in particular that we just celebrated over the weekend, and their whole motto is that sometimes look to hire within, because the culture that we're talking about is the culture of the company also, as well as the culture of the country. And the culture of the companies sometimes is very unique. And you can hire somebody that seems to have a lot more fit, from outside. But what's the biggest downside to that is that they don't know the culture of your company. And sometimes that can be a real disruptive force. So all of the good that could come from that advanced knowledge is being dissipated because they don't fit in. They're used to doing things a totally different way, and maybe they think it's better, and they come in and they start butting heads, or they don't fit in and they don't try to integrate into the new culture. They give some resistance. So there's all these factors that go into it. So one of the things is, if you're doing corporate training and you're taking the people that are already in these companies, and you're starting to give them the exact precise knowledge they need to do this function. Now, you may want them to do 4 different functions, but if you get one function in with them and they start performing in it, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to produce results for the company, but it's also going to give that person an empowerment. It's working. I like it. And so then you can do another one, or you can put one of his colleagues on to that other specific point, and the company can get into it and can become functional much quicker. And these people are already part of that corporate culture, and it seems to fit better. So that's one of the things that CMU has looked at, and that's an area we're really moving into. And I think that's a win-win for everyone, because it's more cost effective, it's more time effective, and it's more at the bottom line effective for the company.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
Well, the big problem that organizations have is the same problem we individually have, and that's knowing ourselves. Yes, a lot of our struggles is to figure out who we are and to live that life. And that's one of the things that's always impressed me about Home Stoner. If you meet Home Stoner, he's exactly as he is. There's no layers of fakeness there. He knows exactly who he is, and there's no breaks. He goes out and does what he needs to do. Well, if you look at companies, a lot of times they don't know who they are. I mean, ask somebody from IBM, what's IBM? What do you do? Well, it's technology. And so even small companies, and I've done this for hundreds of companies, when you ask very simple questions, why do you do what you do? What do you do? What is your purpose? What are you trying to do? So the biggest thing is to use your people and get a group of people on board to really go through that process of answering very simple but very difficult questions. Why do you do what you do? What are you trying to get? Once you have that group of people and culture, then you can say, who do you want to help, and how do we do that? And that technology starts stepping in, is how can technology get you where you need to go? And that's where you have to look at lots of different solutions sometimes. And it's getting more complicated today, because when you talk about platforms, that's not one technology do one thing. That's a bunch of technologies working together. Like, look at yourself. You've got StreamYard here, streaming. That's only part of what you're doing. You can't even reach all your viewers on StreamYard. You've got so many that don't even have access to StreamYard. So you say, what's the technology? Turns out there is a technology to take StreamYard to people who don't have access to it. That technology may change, but you have to realize that that's part of your ecosystem, is your partners that come provide content for you here. the businesses and ministers and governments that you're going to help, the people who don't have access to the technology that you're trying to educate about the technology. That's the real key. There is most things are almost like an ecosystem now, and they need some platform. And by the way, when I say platform, that doesn't necessarily mean technology. It may be a phone call, it may be somebody walking, it may be meetings. But if you can accelerate that platform and speed of decision making through technology, that's where to do it. So the real problem, I've always worked with lots of companies. I can go get technology people in there cheaply. We've done email, we've done data, we've done communications, we've integrated things. That's the easiest part. The toughest part, again, is figuring out who they are and who they want to be.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. One of the important point right now, even in the COVID situations, many startup developing right now, many startup actually coming in the markets, and entrepreneurship ultimately the way of solving the problem. Home Stoner, you are a very good successful entrepreneur. Not only that, you are producing many entrepreneurs in around the world. My questions to you, what your advice for our youth community, how they can grow themselves in this COVID situation and in this challenging situation?
It's funny. What I would suggest, my first suggestion would be surround yourself with people that have already made the mistakes. Surround yourself with seniors who've experienced what you've experienced and already made the mistakes so you don't have to make them twice. That's really, really important. Okay, because young people, they think they know everything. They may know a lot, just like my son. They may think that they know everything, but they do not know everything. And the thing that will kill you the most in business is trusting people who think they know. Never trust someone who says, I think I know.
Mhm.
When you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business, you want to minimize those mistakes. To minimize mistakes, surround yourself by people who've already made mistakes.
Excellent. Dr. Stan Foster and Mr. Eriks, beside academy, what do you want to advise for these entrepreneurs? Because we are developing the ecosystem, there are many entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Well, again, I think what Holmes just came, and said is really the key, the heart of it, and it's a key principle. In the United States, there's an organization called SCORE, which is senior. It's a core of retired executives, and it's like being mentored by somebody that has been there and knows where those major pitfalls are, not the minor ones. So it's a kind of a blend in being an entrepreneur of coming up with an idea potentially that solves a problem that currently isn't being solved. That's wonderful. Okay. But then that's a direction and that's a mission to go down. But in doing that, you still have to do many of the things that are standard in business. All right. And those standard things are the ones that Holmes is talking about. Okay. Where you can make, you have a great idea, you're on full steam ahead, and all of a sudden you make just a sophomore mistake. You don't know what you don't know, and you thought it was good, and that mistake tends to put you and derail you for a while. Now that derailing could be for a short period of time, or it could put you out of business totally. So again, that's what you're saying, and many times people, it's that old saying that you never have a second chance to make a first impression. Right. So as you're going down in your business, you want to make sure that you don't make those sophomoric mistakes, and having somebody that's an advisor that's a little bit more sage and that can keep you from making those foolish mistakes is going to help you. And then, of course, it augments your original idea, or taking an idea and maybe it's not totally original, but the way that you're doing it is giving it a different spin that makes all the difference in the marketplace. So those things are where I would be if I was an entrepreneur. I've always frankly, I have always been an entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 17 years old, and I like it. You know, I was a founder of California Miramar University, but I did it by seeing a need, and I wanted to be effective in that. And believe me, I wish I would have taken my own advice because I made a lot of mistakes, you know, coming through that cost me time. It cost me, you know, months and years. And so I can really speak to this by experience.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
Well, so I started a Internet of Things company with 4 25-year-old kids and an older sales guy. And the difference between business and entrepreneurship is business says, let's plan something. And the entrepreneur says, I don't have time to plan. Let's do it and see if it works. So what we learned is the 3 F's. So while business is failure, entrepreneurs fail fast, frequent. In other words, it's how fast you can fail. Fail before you get way down that road. And if you read the Lean Entrepreneur by Eric Rice, book Lean Entrepreneur by Eric Rice, kind of the gate of that, but it's, you know, embrace your failures. He failed 3 times big before we found even what worked. So what we chased for 6 months and next year, and, you know, finally we chased the thing for 3 years, and it was basically by chasing and changing very quickly. So don't be afraid of failure. It brings up the point that Holmes Stoner brought in, and that's about help. In business, it's a team. You can use anybody you want. I can tell you that I got together competitors. They actually would have, because we did slightly different areas, they would have to critique their plans. And then I would sit around a room, have lunch, and I have 4 of them. They'd say, so what are you thinking about next? And they would beat, oh, that's stupid, or what this, or have you thought of this? So one of my sales mentors, Eric Lofholm, taught me that if you have a passion for doing, somebody has a passion for helping you do that, whatever it is. If you want to learn about artificial intelligence, or somebody who can't wait to tell you about artificial intelligence, if you want to figure out what your piece about, there's somebody who can't wait to help you figure that out. And so those are the 2 things I would say is fail fastly, and number 2 is reach out to the right people, because there's somebody who wants to help you get wherever you want to go. Like you're doing this because you want to help people.
And I just add one other.
Thank you.
That's don't give up. Don't give up. I think a lot of times being in it for the long haul is huge. Now, this goes back to Industry 2.0, but Thomas Edison had a heck of a time finding the element for the filament in a light bulb. You know, I think there's a famous quote, and I'm not going to hit it straight on, but he says, I now know 1,000 things that won't work as a filament for a light bulb, but he didn't give up. And because he had the tenacity to do that and stick to it, and found that one element that finally worked, you know, an entire industry was created. So, you know, that's it. Don't give up.
There's something called a yield point.
Yeah.
It's where you push and push, and you push and push, and you push, putting more, and then finally something moves. Okay. You know, it's like you start pushing a rock. It's not where you get more people. You find the force, and then the rock moves, and when it moves, it moves. So most people give up about, you know, a centimeter from the finish, because it's so hard all the way down.
Excellent.
It's so hard. You finally get there, and then you know, a friend of mine mentoring a friend who. But I've done everything everyone needed me to do. Worked hard. I built this team, and we're just not having any success. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And my friend and one of my mentors, you're not doing anything wrong. You just haven't done it long enough. There's just something called the flywheel if you read the book The Great by Jim Collins. He talks about, getting this flywheel going is really hard, but once it goes, that's the real key. And so, that's the flywheel effect, is you have to keep pushing till it works, because the people don't realize is, even if you're doing exactly, it can take time. And by the way, that guy that was counseled friends, within 6 months, he was like in the top 10 people of the whole organization. In 6 months, nothing. He went from doing
two
well
sayings
to
for
top
you.
10 in 6 months.
I have two sayings for you, Sharif, because I'm going to have to leave you very shortly, but I'll leave you with these two sayings. Okay. Number one is, don't let somebody who gave up on their dreams take you out of yours.
Excellent.
Okay. Number two is 95% of the people who work for somebody else work for somebody who never gave up.
True.
You remember those two things when you were a young person with stars in your eyes, starting your own company with a dream. You follow that dream. You surround yourself with people that are going to help you and support you, and never give up.
Excellent.
There's along that lines, the book Think and Grow Rich was by Napoleon Hill, interviewed the richest people at the time, and what he said was, what are they doing that we're not doing? What are they doing? He just studied for a decade. He studied the richest people, and he came up with, I think, 10, 13 things in there that people who were rich did, people who did, and one of the things, rich people, the people who know what I'm talking about, poor people listen in family. And why would you ask about starting a business from somebody who's started a business? They'll say, oh, let me tell you, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite books, and I always call it the reverse ABCs, because this was conceive, C, believe, B, achieve, A, and that belief is a lot of hard work. Okay, it's not giving up. It's that belief is not just inaction and concept, but it's actually stick-to-itiveness, as we've been talking about. So that's a good one, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. This is most important. I request all of our youth, like those who listen to this show. This is important, actually. Dr. Stan Foster, Mr. Eric, as well as Mr. Home Stoner, everybody is famous with their work, with their activities, with their entrepreneurship attitudes. And most important part of that, what I try to understand, that they learn from their mistakes. And this is the things. Do not afraid that, okay, I will lose my point, I will lose this point, I will lose social status. Actually, in Asia, it's happened. If anybody fail, society do not recognize. Society said, okay, you are not part of that because you fail. So issue is that we have to understand. I especially request the parents, request the guardian, university, corporation. You have to understand. You have to motivate your people. You have to motivate your youth community. If you can motivate them, if you can support them, then they can take different kind of initiative. And I'm sure everybody here, those who are discussing about this entrepreneurship, discussing about startup, industry 4.0, they have a lot of failures. Now they are successful. Now they build up a successful university. They're developing different kind of important things. So my request to the Mr. Stan Foster and Mr. Eric, like tomorrow we have another session, and it will be 200 of our episodes. Many famous speakers from around the world, they will join in at 11 p.m. Malaysia time. But before that, like how you want to share a process of developing startup ecosystem. Yes.
Okay, so the first thing is, like we said, figure out who you are, but don't be so fixed on that. It's change. Who you are can change, Like we start off as a local marketing company, went to a cross cloud computing company, went to an Internet of Things company. So don't be so. And by the way, it all used the exact same technology, so we didn't change the technology. We just found what it was. So number one is to figure out what you want to go. And I mentioned The Lean Startup by Eric Rice, and The Lean Entrepreneur is a follow-on book on that by one of my friends, Brant Cooper. But there's also a book called The Right It. The Right It, and it follows a person who got all successful startup people together, and they went and started a company and everything right, the right people, the right money, the right vendors, and it failed terribly. And he said, if we've got the right team and we did everything right, why didn't we succeed? And it was about, well, that might be right for you. Is it right for the market? So he got The Right It, which talks about the concept of prototyping. Prototyping is when you think you have something and you roll it out there. Prototyping are tests you do to say, is it even building a prototype? And I'll give you an example of that. I think it was IBM wanted to figure out whether a dictation machine would be worthwhile. And so in a dictation machine, you make a screen, you talk, and would write down everything you say, which to now is pretty trivial, but back then it was pretty heavy. Well, that would have been a lot of developed in hardware and software to build this thing. So what they did is they had people talk into a mic to test it, and then on the screen, it would write down everything they say. So how would you do that? How would you test to see what people really wanted that without going to the effort of building a prototype? What they actually did is they just had people who type really fast. They're listening to the microphone and typing to the screen. And what they found out is, no, people didn't want that. So they saved the whole effort of going to build that prototype. Well, you can test that anything. Will people go to a website? Will people buy this? Some people wanted to know what would buy their product at IKEA, so they just went into IKEA and put their product up there with the price tag and see if people would pick it up. Okay, I guess they would. So the right it, knowing yourself and what you want is important, but your market is really important, and so you can do a lot of tests to see the market does that. So so that's one of the things that I've done is help people get crystal clear on who they are and who they want to help. The Lean Entrepreneur talks about how you fail fast frequently in a lot of those books. The Lean Startup by Christ, Lean Entrepreneur by Brant Cooper, and then The Right It says, well, if you've got that, yeah, how do you even know that that's where you want to go on? Because here's the thing about all your young people, you don't have a lot of resources, so you can't go too long down the path, and you don't have a lot of time. So you can't mess around, because unless you have this big bankroll with your burn rate, how much runway you have, well, you may have, like we did, zero runway. How much money do we make? We don't have any money to invest in anything. So how do you start a tech company, an Internet of Things company, with we end up borrowing like $25,000 here and there and paying it back, but with almost no money. How does a young person, or not even young, new person, a lot of entrepreneurs these days, especially in San Diego, there's a lot of Qualcomm people that aren't working at Qualcomm anymore. And so it doesn't matter if you're young or old. If you're new, figure out who you are, understand lean startup methodology, understand the right bet, and get help, get mentors for anything you want to do. And guess what? No limit to how many you can, or who you can ask, but you have to ask. And that's why organizations like the BBC exists, so that you have somebody you can ask. Do you know anybody who could help me in manufacturing in Malaysia?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Eric, I agree. I mean, I know you here in San Diego before you came and worked with us at California Miramar. You would do seminars for entrepreneurs, and I always thought that was wonderful, right? Because again, that comes back that full circle to not knowing what you don't know, and getting that senior sage advice. And you were making it very easy for people because you gave them a platform in which they could go and follow. So I give you kudos.
Actually, I still do that, and I did that at the university. So the problem is everybody kept asking for my time, and they would take me to lunch or let me, buy you dinner, talk to me, and I love doing that. And who doesn't like lunches and dinners and things like that, even or coffee? Who doesn't like that kind of stuff? But as we got more involved, especially at the university, which was transforming education, I didn't have time like anymore. So what I said was, I will give an hour a week to anybody who needs help for free. And then that became too hard. So I generally give 2 hours every other week, just on Zoom. And people walk away from there. We had one person go, yeah, I've been pretty successful for 15 years. I tell people what to do. They do it. They're really successful. But this is the first time in 15 years I can explain to people what I do. Again, that weakness. But it's hard. Well, I have experience doing that for hundreds of people. It's like real easy for me just to ask these simple questions because I've done it so many times. When I do that to myself, boy, is that hard. I have to have Dr. Foster and Dr. Guyabati and Holmes Stoner and Muya and a whole bunch of people beat me up because when you do it yourself, it's really hard. And one of the reasons is it's something called the curse of knowledge. We know too much. We assume everybody's going to see this. And of course, everybody, and you don't. It's just people go, no, you don't. It's not what you think it is. So,
yes.
So the only thing I can add to that, Eric, I mean, one of the things that people do, and especially entrepreneurs, and back to your point, Sharif, a lot of times this is that fear of failure but more often than not, you make your failure much more in your own mind than anybody else does. And one of the things that I want to use to prove this point, now we've had, 40 some presidents in the United States, 8 of them had bankruptcies. 8 out of 40. That's a pretty high percentage. 46. Okay, so it's amazing. It's amazing, and so it didn't stop them. They're not defined by that. As a matter of fact, that's a little footnote. Most people don't even remember or have any knowledge, and even if they do. And one of them's Abraham Lincoln, for goodness sakes. Okay, some of our most famous presidents, Thomas Jefferson. So it's a situation where don't be defined and don't be afraid to take that step because of failing. It's just a matter that that's just part of the learning process. As a matter of fact, I think everyone would admit you learn much more from your failures than you do from your successes because they stay with you. They bury themselves into your psyche. You will never make that mistake again. So that's a very healthy thing.
Yes.
Successes feel better though.
Yes.
Well,
there are few questions actually. They love to learn more because today's session is very live.
That's why you need a strong network of people of support, because those failures hurt. They're not always
exactly.
I can still think back of some of my failures and they've dulled time and I appreciate it, but some still hurt. So you need people to say, you're not a bad person. You're doing okay. Just because this failed doesn't mean you're a failure. It's a big difference between you being a failure. And it's kind of like what Dr. Foster said, I didn't fail. I just figured out 100 ways not to build a life.
Yes. Excellent. There are a few questions I just want to take from audience. Like, I think they want to know which manufacturing companies adapted Industry 4.0, adapted and implement. From Labib. From Shoma, her question is that impact of Industry 4.0 implementation on manufacturing industry. I think he wants to know, Mr. Shahrukh wants to know about the risks for employees when we implement Industry 4.0. And Tahrina, she wants to know about Industry 4.0 readiness versus Industry 4.0 adaptations. So yes, I want to start with Mr. Eric, then Stan Foster. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm looking at readiness versus adoption.
Yes.
the biggest, there are things that you need to do to be ready for 4.0. The toughest one is changing your culture and training your team to be ready. So I could go out and give virtual reality technology to a company right now, and one of our friends is writing a book talk about. It's called I think virtual reality on Mainstream Street. It's that there's things you could do, right? You could give that people. If we went and gave people and said, here's all the stuff you need, we'll even train you, that doesn't mean a company would be successful at it. Because you have to understand the impact of that technology on your customer, on yourself, but most on your team. Well, how would you use that technology? How would you use virtual reality technology? So you can add 3D cameras, 360 cameras to real estate or tours of a factory right now, but people don't know how to use technology. The biggest mistake people made is what Dr. Foster brought up before, which is, well, I'll just do what I've always done and do it here. An example of lots of universities approached me to teach for them. And I said, why do you want me to teach for you? They, oh, because we want to help you get online. And I said, well, why do you want to go online? So that we can be online. But why do you want to take your courses online? Well, so we can be online. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, we haven't put it online. I said, well, isn't that like if you're a newspaper, taking a picture of the newspaper and posting that online? I said, that's not what online does. You can search, you can get updates, you can get alerts. That's what the new technology does. And I found that the same in education is most of them just said, how do I take this class that I've always have and just put it online? We had to change the whole culture to say, that's not what online's. Yeah, you can do that, but that's not what online's about. So when you talk about 4.0 readiness, it's understanding, getting your team trained in the culture, understanding the technology, and you have to understand which technology will be applicable when. So back when, Tower Records was a bookstore, it was a record store, they should start thinking about online way before. And then once record store came online, they should start thinking about music delivery systems and not records, and so Tower Records missed that in their business today. So they weren't industry 4.0 ready with the technology there, which was online music, online, media delivery. It was there, but the culture wasn't ready. So that's readiness. Are your people ready is the tough thing. Does your market ready? Do you know what your customers need to ready? Adoption is just putting that technology in place. Right. So it's saying, okay, we're ready for the technology. Now let's do it. So for example, California Miramar University has a whole new backbone, a backbone that automates, the interaction between students and the lessons and the professors and things like that. And we're doing that same thing with the PRBC right now. We're in our planning phase. So PRBC is getting ready for Industry 4.0 adoption. So we're in the Industry 4.0 readiness phase to actually implement these new technologies in the PRBC itself. So hopefully that answers the question between readiness and adoption.
Yeah, and I think, Eric, there's a few other, your answer was spot on with that, by the way. One of the things that happened, I think we talked about this before, but the ways that human interact are going to be different. Again, we remember in the 1980s when we were Industry 3.0, there was no such thing. There was a handful of computer programmers, right? And now today, that's a major job description. A huge major job description. So but a lot of this is going from more the manual type of work and work that can be done more efficiently and more effectively by a robot. Then having the humans to be retrained and then all of this is re-education and retraining, but it's utilizing them at a higher level, at a more interactive and more strategic level, if you will. So I think that's a wonderful to outcome of that. So again, if we look to to the past. The big companies that are starting to do it, we were approached by Siemens, I think, a year and a half ago. They're a huge company, German company. They are definitely going to everything Industry 4.0. And their whole industry is looking at it. But when you implement a strategy, right? It's like when I made the reason I talked about the advertising agency earlier about Holmes. Holmes had one of the biggest advertising businesses in the United States, had huge customers, and then he failed at transitioning it to the internet. And so he knows that's one of those mistakes. He's going, my God, it took a huge business, and in a matter of about 18 months, 19 months, boom, it evaporated. Okay. So, but when businesses come online and they start looking at Industry 4.0, there's a lot of different elements to Industry 4.0. Okay. Internet of Things, all of these aspects, and you're not probably going to use all of those in any one business. So part of the process is to get in there and find out what the other people in the industry that's kind of parallel to what you're wanting to do, what are the elements of Industry 4.0 they're using, and look at them. Again, you don't have to always have original thought. You can look at seeing what your competitors are doing, how's that working for them, how could it work better, and implement that. But I can tell you right now, you're not going to have the entire gamut of Industry 4.0. You're going to have a tiny little sector of it, how it interfaces with what your business model is, right? So that's part of it. It's learning what you need and only implementing those elements into your business first. And then there may be tag along second phase, third phase elements of Industry 4.0 that you then have in phase 2 and phase 3. And that can, once you get that initial momentum, that lever point that Eric was talking about, well, I call it activity breeds activity. Once you finally get to that, that thing and that flywheel effect, okay, that when things start moving, they have their own inertia. They generate their own energy, and that helps you to keep going and grow. And many times, and with Industry 4.0, if you implement these things at the right manner, it can accelerate your growth because you're utilizing these elements to do the work in a very quick, efficient way. But again, those people that are leading it, you and your team, need to be able to be trained on what's the effective way to use your management sector, your management team to effectively implement Industry 4.0.
There's a lot of questions on manufacturing and Industry 4.0. The first one is, what companies have gone to 4.0? Well, all the big ones. If it's a big company, it's already there. Car manufacturing, Industry 4.0 is managing supply chain while they're building cars. They're taking changes and availabilities and rescheduling. In fact, they can take a change and said somebody changed from cloth seats to leather seats. And some of the car manufacturers can get that change 3 minutes before the car gets there and that change. The other thing, so big companies and small companies, for example, when we were building our Internet of Things company, we did it, and we moved from like planning it in coffee houses to going into co-working places. And we eventually got our own little office within that place. And the people who had the office next to us, one of them was a company called Clever Pet, which used psychologists to figure out how to keep pets occupied during the day so they don't get depressed. And the other one was a company called Feats. And what they were doing is 3D printing shoes. And the key is that if you measure somebody's fit shoe and you make a shoe that matches their feet, it won't be comfortable. Turns out a shoe shouldn't fit exactly everywhere. You need room. And so they were busy building the algorithms. Another company was shifting from large batch orders, large batch orders that came in and you planned and do that, to small batch flexible. In other words, when people want slightly different things. And so they switched from the big assembly line machines to these micro manufacturing machines, where what they would do is take orders and change. So that was an Industry 4.0. When it comes to that question, do you have anything to add to that, Stan?
No, I think you covered that well. Yeah, it's no, it is. I don't see Sharif. Is Sharif still with us?
He's probably coming back. That's part of the problem with Industry 4.0 technology. But the other thing in manufacturing, how does Industry 4.0 affect manufacturing? Well, the first way it affects manufacturing is figuring out what to manufacture. The one thing that Industry 4.0 technologies allow you to follow your customers and know what they want, what the market wants, and then go back and say, well, they may want that, but what's available? Where are my resources? So the ability to link and integrate all the way down the supply chain. Because, you have this thing where you order stuff and people sub things put together to put into bigger assemblies, and you have suppliers and you have inventory, those kind of things. And any change in any of that process can have that effect that they call like the whip effect, where one little thing can drive your whole process. So Industry 4.0 can smooth out all those technology, all those scheduling and availability issues, and run it both forward and backwards. And the other thing it can do is help you forecast what people are going to want. So what do people want right now? What are they going to want? What supplies, what resources? And then the other Industry 4.0 technologies are in the manufacturing itself. Additive printing, you can print hearts now. They have 3D printers for organs they're working on. They have 3D printers for houses. They're big, but they can actually set it down and 3D print a house on site. You got micro manufacturing. So knowing what people want, looking at the supply chain, and then orchestrating the whole process of what goes into what, where, when, and be able to take changes. But to me, my favorite thing about Industry 4.0 is the speed of decision making, data analysis, what that means, what are we doing, goal setting, communicate, get and talk to Dr. Foster real quickly, get your team on board, do it. So one of the big technologies that's coming up is simulation.
Yeah.
Testing things out before they work, before they do it. Like, my son would design these new things for tech shows that nobody'd ever seen before. Well, he did it in 3D first and showed them. In U.S. government right now, if you're doing a computer system, you have to deliver what's called a digital twin. You have to build this idea of digitization, where you take something that's real and you put it in computer so you can do things with it. Well, you can do that for real, make your product digitized, but you can also do that in simulation. So if you deliver a system to the government, you buy it, they want an exact digital copy of that whole system so they can say what if, work it out.
Yeah. They run the models and see where it works and where it fails. It's significant, but again, it comes back to it. Not every element of every business is going to use all of these tools. But again, it's the big companies are using it now. Here in San Diego, we have a large presence of Amazon. They've got one of their major warehouses here, and so many of our students and some of our, a lot of our international students come here. They're on an F1 student visa, and after they've been here for the correct amount of time, for our graduates, it's right away. But undergraduates, they have to be here a year. They can go and work and almost like an internship, and so you're actually learning the business portion of your degree program with hands-on. And I was a professor for that. We call that curricular practical training, CPT. And I was the professor for many of these students. And I was just amazed because I made them talk about what they were doing in their job, how they communicated with their supervisors on a daily, on a weekly basis, how do they, what their job functionalities were, and and tie it back to what they'd learned at the university. So try to make them, as they were working, be able to actively apply that knowledge in a very hands-on way. But I was just super impressed by the way Amazon had made everything Industry 4.0. They are just so efficient as a company, and it's mind-boggling.
So in San Diego, we have a lot of medical companies that are doing Industry 4.0. Things like, they used to have pregnant women at risk go in the hospital and monitor them. And now they just give them these things that just look like Band-Aids. They're small. They put it on their belly and it just talks to the doctor. They can go home. And it does that. So medical is going like crazy. Everything from gene sequencing and things here in San Diego. We also have sports, like the World Golf Clubs and exercise bikes like you've ever seen. A lot of that's going on. We also have, these are just examples of going, we have Walmart Labs here. And it's funny because the director of Walmart Labs, he says his mother thinks that he goes to a Walmart, which is, that big wholesale store there, and greets people or things like that. He said, no, I'm working on the new technology for retail. So just in Carlsbad in the state county, Walmart's working on that too. So if you're looking who's adopting it, everybody, but at the speed they need to, the ones that are successful. So that's the real key, is you don't have to suddenly change everything. It's about what companies should be working on is, what is the next thing I need to change in 90 days and in a year? And the thing you may need to change may not be the technology at all. It may be your thinking, your training. It may just be to find out about some things. So take it one step at a time. But who asked that, you have to be Industry 4.0 ready before you can adopt Industry 4.0. Mm-hmm. And it's an ongoing thing.
I apologize, but I only had an hour and 15 minutes this morning, and I have to go to another meeting. So
yes, thank you. Well, we directly want to go for the concluding remarks for today. I want to start from Dr. Stan Foster, then Mr. Eric. Okay. Yes.
Well, again, I think we can all see that Industry 4.0 is a force that's honest. One of the things we realized at California Miramar University is that we had to put that at the forefront of our teaching and teach some of the new paradigms that are going to be active in implementing that, and with the kind of things that managers are going to need to know. We call that Education 4.0. Okay, so we coined that term, and I think it's a good parallel there. But again, you having the mentorship, looking to see how others are doing it, what elements of 4.0 are necessary in the sector that you're trying to implement. All of those things are very smart strategies. Now, in coming to get your culture and your staff trained, you necessarily don't need to go to a 4-year degree program or a 3-year degree program or a 2-year degree program. You need to get that information quickly, because if you go into that long of a degree program, most of the degree programs are going to not keep up with what's going on, and you'll come out. You might be coming out and a year and a half behind. So you just have to use common sense. Keep watching shows like this we hopefully have our finger on the pulse of what's happening, and we try to share that with you. And I think that if you do that, you have a very good chance. Also, the Pacific Rim Business Council, you see Eric Westrich's history and his background. I think you can take advantage of that. If you have a business, if you're not a member, it doesn't cost anything to join. So I would join it and then start tuning in that way as well. So, but it's been wonderful being with you, and thank you so much, Sharif, for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
So, don't think Industry 4.0, think Business 4.0. It's really just about looking at everything that business does and realize that Industry 4.0 is supported by Education 4.0, Economy 4.0, Supply Chain 4.0, Sustainability. We've been saying Sustainability 4.0 because it just means you have to do what you've done, but in different ways. So a lot of things have to shift because of how fast things are shifting in technology. So it used to be technology followed advanced, not anymore. Now technology, the only thing is Industry 4.0 is a realization that technology is pushing us. Now, it used to be business would move and we'd add technology. And so it just means you need to have some mentor or some available or mentors that are advising you on what's coming down and figure out which things you need to be Industry 4.0 ready. But the process of that, like I said, is figuring out who you are, really. And that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing I've done is figuring out why you're in business. Who are you? What do you do? What's your culture? What do you do at that? The second thing is then figuring out what is the strategy to get that. And Industry 4.0 has to be part of that strategy. But you know what? If you're an entrepreneur in a startup company, so does doing lean startup, failing fast, changing directions, being fluid, and using the prototyping, so that you don't waste time and resources. Again, those are great books. Lean Startup, Eric Rice, Lean Entrepreneur, Brant Cooper, and The Right It are all great books in getting ready. And then just you need to think through the whole thing, from your customer to how your team communicates to how your production, if you're in manufacturing, and resources, and just say, is there anything I can do to make us a little either product differentiate and make my product better, or cost? Can I lower the cost and be a cost differentiator? And so that's really the key to Industry 4.0 is the tough thing starts with you.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. It's really, really great sessions. We learn a lot. I'm sure our students, our audience, everybody learn a lot. So tomorrow we have 200s of episode. I know that everybody busy, but we want to try to make this episode very special. We are reaching 5 millions of the peoples in Asia Pacific, and we are sure our target is 100 million people. Hopefully we will reach with your contributions. So those who join as a speaker, 300 speakers from around the world, 100 different countries, they already join in World Talent Economy Forums. So we want to give our thanks to everyone, those who join for this development. And I want to give special thanks our audience, those who always support us and give us the opportunity to change human lives. So thank you, Mr. Eric, for your valuable supports, and thank you for all of your beautiful advice, guidelines, what we learned from your experience. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you for
nothing else.
today.
People know about prototyping now. Most people probably didn't know about that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eric. Thank you. Take care. Take care.